Welcome to Retire with Purpose, a show specifically designed to help you maximize your financial confidence in retirement. Casey Weed is the CEO and Chief Visionary of Howard Bailey Financial, a certified financial planner and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He's your host on Retire with Purpose.
Hey, I'm Casey Weed, and we believe in retirement strategies that are driven by meaning and purpose. Join us this week and every week as we discuss planning for your best retirement, pinpointing your purpose, building a rock-solid financial plan, and unpacking trending topics that could impact your financial future. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, as he does every week, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, here with me.
Hey.
And we have a wide-ranging discussion about retirement, as we always do, up in the lineup for you here. We're going to be covering, Medicare, 4% withdrawal rule. We're going to talk about rentals. We're going to talk about pensions and 401ks. We have all types of good stuff. So if you're at retirement, in retirement, near retirement, maybe you're just seeking that coveted job optional status, we have a show for you. So you're going to want to stick around till the end. We also have a very special guest. I almost forgot to mention. We have award-winning blogger and creator of Couple Money, Elle Martinez, joining us here shortly. But before we get there, we are going to be covering an article from our weekend reading for retirees and pre-retirees email series. That is an email that goes out every single Friday from my inbox to your inbox. And it is discussing and providing articles around trending topics in the retirement planning space. That could be the latest in retirement income strategies. It could be some basics that can help improve your returns or just your bottom line in retirement, allowing you to be able to spend more in retirement. And you can sign up to receive these articles at retirewithpurpose.com. And then we like to highlight one of those articles for you right here on the radio show. You can also catch the full-length discussion on the Retire with Purpose podcast that Marshall and I do together. We're going to be covering an article from Dan Egan,
Ooh, it's a good one.
Is Director of Behavior Science and Investing at Betterment, the largest robo-advisor in the world. And he was recently a guest on the Retire with Purpose podcast as well. However, that podcast has not been released yet, but you can catch it early if you go on over to our Facebook page, Howard Bailey Financial, like our page, and you can also present your questions to our world-class guests like we did with Dan. We had a lot of great questions. I hope that you get out there and ask some questions as well. Dan runs a blog as well, and I included an article from his blog, and it was titled Sacrifice Throws. That one caught my attention.
Yeah, that sounds like a great title. And then as I read a little bit further, he's talking about a class of throws in jiu-jitsu and aikido known as sacrifice throws. They call them sutimi waza.
I think you did a really good job pronunciation there. And in full disclosure, I did jujitsu for about 30 days, and I still have injuries to prove it. It was these sacrifice throws. You're not supposed to hit someone, right? You're not supposed to directly punch someone, hit someone, break anything. However, they're still extremely painful, and I get the scars.
You can
to prove
attest.
It. What you do is you don't try to stop your opponent. You don't try to dodge your opponent. You accept their momentum and you use it against them by redirecting it. And really, these throws, they require the thrower to move into a potentially disadvantageous position in order to be executed. So let's imagine that I'm running at you, Marshall, and I come straight at you. You lean backwards and actually go onto your back and throw me behind you. That was very risky. It's a risky move because now you're on your back. It has to be executed very precisely. It takes very little strength compared to the effect. The person that did this to me, it was absolutely not as strong as I was.
Yeah, he was a little tiny guy, and he just kind of flipped you over his head, right? I love it, and he's talking here. He's going to relate this back to personal finance because that's his area of expertise. But you know what? We all know that look in our kids' eyes. I always go back to children because, when your kid's got that momentum and he really wants to run outside with no shoes on and it's snowing and cold and you got to take that momentum and redirect it, right?
Yeah, you're going to use emotional momentum in those circumstances. And the way that works, and it's explained in this article by Dan here, behavioral sacrifice, as he calls it. What that is it takes a person's emotional momentum and it diverts it in a new, more productive direction. Right. So we have one of our kids, we've got a 5-year-old, we have a 3-year-old, and they want to do things like this. It's hard to get them to wear anything but underwear and underwear.
That's even hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when they're headed outside, they don't want to wear any clothes. Well, what do? Right. Well, you don't want to turn into an argument. You don't just shut them down and tell them exactly what they have to do.
That's what
that could destroy the next hour of your life.
Well, I was going to say that's what he said. Redirect. That would create agitation and momentum. You don't want to create agitation. You want to use the momentum.
Right. And so it's, hey, well, why don't we try sandals out? I'll wear sandals. You wear sandals. Maybe we'll throw on a sleeveless T-shirt. At least we have
put some
something on,
sunglasses. Right? Yeah.
And that puts me in a potentially disadvantageous position because I don't really want to wear sandals. Yeah. However, it's better than not doing anything at all. And he is really discussing this as it pertains to behavioral finance. Right. So he gives a great example here, and one that you've probably experienced this year with the market's big swings, especially back in March and then upcoming around the election. You might have wanted to make some drastic changes in your investment strategy. For instance, maybe you were like this Kramer guy here who said, hey, markets fell yesterday, and I've been watching the news, and you know what, I want to do something. I call my advisor. Maybe you've called your advisor, say, hey, the markets aren't looking so hot. I think we need to get out of here. I think we need to sell. And maybe you did this back in March, and you had your advisor try to appeal to your rational side, right? I think as advisors, that's where our head goes first. Yeah. We go, hey, you shouldn't do anything. Let's stay the course. This was part of the plan. So let's just focus on the long term, keep calm, carry on. Yeah. However, how well does that actually work? Then you probably said, you know what, I'm going to go get a different opinion. Yeah. Or you said, no, I'm doing what I want to do. Go ahead, sell. I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. And instead of doing that, what he's saying is do that sacrifice throw. It's roll with the momentum and suggest other actions, right? Because this client has come in and clearly wants to do something. So, instead of...
So do something.
Yeah. So instead of going to cash, maybe do some tax loss harvesting. Use some of the proceeds to buy what's down the most and rebalance. Maybe take advantage of this market fall because you've got some cash on the sidelines. Present to them a buying opportunity. You're using that momentum that they had for good here.
Yeah, it could be maybe, we have a lot of families that have some high cost mutual funds that they brought over that we haven't been able to justify selling, or they just aren't comfortable selling at this point because they say, you know what, I just don't want to pay the taxes. However, in this context, we go, hey, this is an opportunity for us to sell out of some of those high cost funds, reallocate those mutual funds to some place that's lower cost. Let's reallocate from those mutual funds. You're paying 1-2% a year. Let's move them over someplace where you can pay 0.1% per year. Are we going to pay some taxes? Absolutely. However, you'd like to reduce the overall risk. This is one of the many ways that we can do that. We're looking for opportunities to take some action, and then you could take it to the extreme. Dan Egan here, Director of Behavioral Finance at Betterment, he says there's extreme sutemi-waza. And I don't know if I did as well on pronouncing Sutemi-waza. You did. But, you could also suggest actions that are extreme and clearly wrong. Yeah. And it can put you in a position where you are forced to be the voice of reason, that other extreme. And I've taken this approach before. I say, you think that it's time to sell and you think the market's going to go down. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just short the market? Ideally, why don't we borrow some money? Why don't we use some leverage?
Yeah, let's leverage
to short the market. If you're so positive the market's going to go down, then maybe we should do this. And nobody ever does, right? That's not what we want to do at all. This is putting me in a dangerous situation because now I am permitting the potential for harm. However, it's always been helpful because now it's put that other individual in the position to reconsider the strength of their belief and moderate it on their own.
Yeah, they become the voice of reason to themselves. And you did this by shifting the frame of reference so that they can take an action that is likely to be more beneficial.
Yeah, it can be because we naturally have a bias for action. We want to do something, even when inaction would be advisable. It would be better to take an action that would allow you to sleep better at night. And sometimes it can be the smallest thing that you can make a change. But if you're concerned whether the market's going up, you want to take advantage of it, the market's going down, you want to bail out or take advantage of it, you should do something in those scenarios. But it shouldn't be too drastic. And you look for those opportunities to make minor changes that can lead to the best long-term result for you, your financial plan, your family. The thing is, we're at our most impulsive when we are emotionally agitated. And 2020 has been a year of emotional agitation. Everybody's felt it in some way, shape, or form. And it has this compound effect. We have an election. We have
potential tax law changes.
We have crises. We have a racial inequality situation going on across the country. We have volatile stock markets. We have all of these things, let alone you might have been stuck at home for the last 6 months. And that can be a little agitating at the same time. And you want to make some decisions. You just need to make sure that you're having a good conversation with someone that can show you the best decisions that you can make for your financial future. Inaction isn't the most advisable course of action. You should be taking some action right now, and you need to talk with someone that can help you with that. And our team is here to help with that. Right now, we are offering a complimentary financial review for you. And the next 10 callers, you can meet with an independent financial advisor on our team, either in person, through a video meeting from the comfort of your home. We'll help you determine how prepared you are to handle what comes next. Pitfalls like inflation, healthcare emergencies, rising taxes, the election, stock market crashes. In short, we're here to take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. And it can take just 30 minutes to have that productive conversation. So right now, for the next 10 callers to call right now, 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review we're offering with no obligation. Again, that number, 866-482-9559. Now for our question of the day, how much does the average affluent adult age 55 to 75 have in retirement savings? $300,000, $500,000, $900,000, $2 million. We're going to have the answer when we return.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed, and joining me, as always, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson. It is our turn to turn the mic over to you to see if you can answer our question of the day. How much does the average affluent adult age 55 to 75 have in retirement savings? Is that $300,000, $500,000, $900,000, $2 million? Marshall, with the answer?
Answer is C, $900,000.
Geez, 900,000 to be exact. That's $920,400. So where do you land? Are you at 500,000, 100,000, $9 million? It's always nice to have a benchmark. And Schwab did this study for us, and they call it the Schwab Modern Retirement Survey. My first question is, how do they define an affluent adult age 55 to 75? So I dug into the study, and it was a survey of individuals aged 55 to 75 that have over $100,000 saved. That could be in their 401ks or IRAs. That could be bank savings. That's how they defined an affluent adult, age 55 to 75. I was actually quite surprised the number was that high.
Yeah, sure.
However, the thing with averages is that large numbers and small numbers tend to throw each other off, and we end up at a medium. So I'm sure there were some $10 million numbers in there, $20 million numbers in there, and some $150,000 numbers.
Right, absolutely, and of course they're not cutting that top end off, so it skews things a little bit. But it is a really good study. I would encourage everyone to check that out.
What got me thinking it was, is it enough? Individuals are going to go, is it enough? And I thought, Marshall, at some point we should do a segment here that has to do with retiring on $100,000. Yeah. We've helped many retirees retire on $100,000, $200,000. And the reality is that it doesn't matter how much you have saved, you can retire. I was just meeting with my mother-in-law, and she said, boy, I really want to retire. Can I retire? I said, you can absolutely retire. Are you willing to cut some expenses? Yeah. And she said, no, I'm not. I said, well, then you should probably keep working for a couple more years. Yeah. And that's the reality, because if you want to spend $1,500 a month, then you can probably retire on your Social Security benefit and a small supplement. Sure. However, if you want to retire on $15,000 a month, it's going to take a little bit more.
Just a hair. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Knowing your numbers and knowing how much you spend is key to having that confidence to know that you have enough to retire.
Well, and if you're hearing this, you're going, I don't know. I would like to retire. Maybe you have $300,000. You go, I didn't think it was enough, but maybe I'm wrong. Well, then give us a call. We'll sit down with you. We will run a comprehensive retirement income analysis to see if we can get you retired like the other 1,000 retirees that we've helped do just that. Give us a call right now at 866-482-9559, and we will help get you on the course to your very own secure and independent retirement. Right now, maybe you're not ready to pick up the phone and do that, but you'd like to ask a question. Maybe you have something that's keeping you up at night. You have questions, you have concerns. You're wondering about Medicare. You're wondering about taxes. You're wondering about the election. You're wondering what your advisor told you the other day, and if it's right or if he's wrong. Then go to retirewithpurpose.com. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it says Ask Casey a Question. Well, that's what we're doing right here. So go ahead, go to retirewithpurpose.com, drop me a question, and we will get you an answer. Now, if you would like, we will feature that question right here on the radio show. And that's what we did with Melanie in Niles, Michigan. Melanie says, my parents have over 80% of their net worth in rental properties. How risky is this as a retirement strategy?
Melanie, great question. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you have 80% of your net worth in any sort of asset, it's probably somewhat of a risky strategy. No single asset is going to be perfect for everything. No single asset is going to be perfect for growth and liquidity and income and consistency and big time speculative growth. There's just no magic bullet out there, Casey. And yes, rental properties are great assets, right? They can produce income. They can keep pace with inflation, but also there's inherent challenges. Look at this year when rents are forgiven in certain parts of the country. I mean, there are inherent risks to that.
Yeah, Marshall, I would say that I'm like you. I love rental properties. I own rental properties myself. I grew up in that business. My dad owned rentals ever since I was a little kid, and that's how he created most of his net worth today. Now, today, most of his net worth is not in rental properties. Right. There are inherent risks, and I think we saw that in many markets in the U.S. this year, where we had renters that no longer had to pay their rent. Yeah, and many retirees lost their retirement income as a result of that. So there are extreme situations. No asset class is perfect. It doesn't matter if it's an annuity or a life insurance product or the S&P 500 index fund. Yeah, there are unknowables out there. There are known knowns, there are unknown knowns, and there's unknown unknowns. And that's why we diversify, is because of those unknown unknowns. We don't know what could happen in the future, and it could be something that we could have never foreseen that could throw off a retirement strategy. Now, I'm also going to throw this in there. I don't know your parents. It depends on a number of different factors. Let's say mom and dad are worth $10 million. And so they have $8 million in rental properties. They've got $2 million in cash, and they spend $3,000 a month. Well, in that scenario, they could guarantee all of the retirement income for the rest of their life, more than enough. With that $2 million, they might have $150,000 in guaranteed income that they can't outlive. And the rental properties are something they're willing to roll the dice on and end up looking for those bigger gains. Now they're looking for those 10, 20%. But I would also say, like I say, it comes down to their income and expenses. It's all relative. And the type of rentals that they have are going to it will be very important as well. I mean, look what's happening in the commercial market right now. We're finding that we can work from home. We're finding that we don't need offices. We don't need large office buildings in order to conduct business. People are working from home today, and that's impacting commercial real estate. If we go back, listen to the podcast that I conducted with Jason Hartman, who's one of the top real estate experts in the country. And he talks about the relative risk of different types of rental properties. Vacation rentals, much higher risk. Now, if you have your average family home that's $150,000 home, now that's a lower risk endeavor because people are always going to need homes. And that's one thing that I would try to keep in mind as you're evaluating this for your parents, Melanie. Next question comes from Kel in Fort Wayne.
Kel says, is it true if you switch from the original Medicare to Medicare Advantage, you want to switch back at some point, that you run the risk of being uninsurable when trying to get a new gap policy?
That's 100% true, Kel. And that's why I actually had a discussion with our Medicare expert that's in office at our firm about this prior to answering your question. And we both said, I mean, we would always recommend that if someone's signing up for Medicare at the onset, that they get traditional Medicare, because you may not have the option down the road. If you sign up for Medicare Advantage and then you decide you want to switch back, something happens with your plan or one of those unknown unknowns comes up, your hands could be potentially tied because you just don't have the ability to switch. You're uninsurable at that point. And so I would like to see you sign up for traditional Medicare, and that gives you the flexibility that you could go to Medicare Advantage, but there is less risk with you signing up for traditional Medicare first rather than going to Medicare Advantage.
Yeah, it's really a complex topic, right? We've got a few really good podcasts out there on this specific topic, and it changes Casey, that's the hard part, is it changes every year. But this is one of those things that doesn't change, and you just have to understand the difference between Medicare Advantage and traditional Medicare.
Well, I was told by one of the clients I've worked with for a number of years, just turned 65, worked with our Medicare expert in-house, and he said, I talked with a number of different Medicare individuals that were selling Medicare Advantage, and he said, I was just so overwhelmed, so confused. This is a guy that worked in the insurance field, right? He knows this stuff already, and he said this was a really complex decision, but it gave me a great deal of peace of mind knowing that I had an independent party that could share with me all the options, all the ins and outs, and find the best solution for me. Our last question comes from Alan in Huntington and says, is the 4% withdrawal rate still safe for retirement? Which investments is it best to do it with?
Alan, that's a wonderful question. The short answer, in my opinion, is no. You have to understand the inherent risk and where William Bennigan came up with the 4% withdrawal rule. We're not going to go through it in exact detail, but the idea was you have a 60-40 asset mix. You withdraw 4% a year. It should last to your, 85, Casey, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the reality was that worked, but it only worked 85% of the time when he won a Nobel Prize for it to begin with. So it's not always fail safe. It's a good, one of those rules of thumb. You can kind of use that as a gauge. How I look at it is if somebody tells me they're taking a dollar amount and it's 6 or 7%, then you've got a risky plan. If it's 1 or 2 or 3%, you're kind of below risk. But I think that the numbers have come out here at closer to 3 or 3.5, or depending on how you strategize your asset allocation.
Well, Marshall, my answer would be maybe, but why? Why do that in a world where there's 1,000,001 better strategies than this, antique strategy from the dark ages? The world has changed. This is old. It's outdated. There is much better research. Go out there, listen to our interview we did with Dr. Wade Pfau. This is the top retirement researcher in the country. go back, listen to our interview we did with Dr. David Blanchett, the head of retirement research at Morningstar. The top retirement income experts in the world today, they're not recommending 4% withdrawal rules. It doesn't mean that you have to do something drastically different, but there are better strategies out there today. We talk about all of these things on our podcast. We implement these cutting edge strategies with the families that we work with. I mean, the simple answer is you can get a guaranteed income of 6-7% today. So why take the risk of only getting a 4% withdrawal rate and maybe having a 50-50 chance that it actually works out? It's time to get with the times. If you're working with a broker that's still working off these old 4% withdrawal rules, then apparently they're not following the latest in retirement research. It's time for you to catch up so that you can have the secure and independent retirement you deserve. And you're not going to have that confidence if you're always coming back to this question and wondering, is this safe? Is this a safe strategy? And we're offering you a complimentary financial review today. We're going to offer this for the next 10 callers. You'll be able to meet with an independent financial advisor on our team. We'll walk you through all of the latest in retirement income strategies and figure out which one is best for you. We can do this on a video meeting. You don't even have to set foot in our office. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. We'll help you determine how prepared you are to handle retirement pitfalls, inflation, rising taxes, healthcare emergencies, and more. We're here to take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. And it doesn't have to take hours. It can take just 30 minutes to see if you're on the right track. So for the next 10 callers that call right now, 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review at no obligation, 866-482-9559. Next up, we have award-winning blogger Elle Martinez, the creator of Couple Money, coming out to talk about marriage and financial wellness together.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, and another very special guest that joined us for episode number 200 of the Retire with Purpose podcast, award-winning blogger Elle Martinez. Elle is the creator of Couple Money, a site and a podcast dedicated to helping spouses strengthen their marriage and financial wellness together. Elle interviews financial experts, real-life couples who have achieved impressive financial goals, such as becoming debt-free, starting a business, retiring early, and she helps spouses identify financial patterns and habits that'll in turn allow them to maximize both their wealth and their relationship. Truly enjoyed this interview. It has yet to go live on the Retire with Purpose podcast, which you can listen to on your phone, or you could just go to retirewithpurpose.com, or if you want to listen to this one, you can catch it early on our Facebook page as we go live every time we record a new podcast. When I was excited to have Elle on, as we encounter a lot of couple money problems, and I've seen this, and experienced this in our own lives.
Yeah, sure.
I would say, it's one of the number one causes of divorce. And for my parents, I'd say it was, one of the top reasons that their marriage ended in divorce as well. And that's why it was such an important element of our marriage on the very front end. I wanted to make sure we really had everything dialed in from a financial perspective and we were on the same page. However, you may have went your entire marriage and never really had the money discussion until you step into retirement. And at that time, you find, boy, how do we even start this conversation? Where do we begin?
Right.
And that was the start of our conversation. I said, Elle, where do we start this conversation? How do we start this conversation? Do we start with the spreadsheet or do we start with some kind of discussion? What should it look like?
It sounds counterintuitive, especially when you're talking about personal finance and knocking out those goals. But one of the first steps I recommend with couples is sitting down, put away the numbers, and actually start talking about what would you like to do if money wasn't an issue. What you're trying to do is persuade your spouse, but the first step is to find that motivating factor. What drives them, to to get up each morning, what would they like to do if you guys already had that money in the bank? Everything's in the accounts, everything's squared away. How would you spend your days?
Yeah, I know a lot of advisors that use this as a conversation starter.
Yeah, sure.
What would a dream retirement look like? What would you do if money was no object? And what's funny is, I've never had anybody say, "Oh, well, I'd go get a 150-foot yacht and I'd move to Spain and I'd get a Ferrari." Most of the families that we work with, they're conservative, Christian, hardworking savers. Yeah, they have been doing this their entire lives. And the way that you've spent money over the last 30 years, it's probably not going to change. Your habits are ingrained in you as you step into retirement, that you're not going to see any big shifts, but it can be a good motivator to get the mind thinking, especially for a spouse that thinks with a different part of their mind than you do.
Yeah.
You might think with the engineer's mind, while they're over here thinking about vision and pictures and wonderful events, and that can be motivating. That can be more exciting than the spreadsheet is to you.
Well, and it's almost a sacrifice throw, right? You're taking away, you're reframing something and saying, hey, if money was no object, what would you do? And you're accepting their momentum and what's on their mind.
Well, one of the biggest struggles is usually the budget. One spouse is a spender, one's the saver. One wants to spend everything before they die. The other one wants to pass everything on to the kids. And that can lead to some financial infidelity. It can lead to some arguments. Elle shares with us here that, a lot of the times it isn't really about money in the first place.
And I think we need to acknowledge that a lot of times the money fights that couples have, that we have, isn't really about the money. There is some other issue going on.
Yeah.
And in that case, is it a spending issue for the wife? Then you want to dig in, whether it's the husband or wife. Do they feel like the budget's restrictive? Because in some cases I've seen that where one spouse presents it as, they're always breaking the budget. But then I look at the budget and you know what? It is great in a perfect world where we are robots and we keep to this strict thing, but there is like no room in the budget for things that their spouse enjoyed, and as couples, I talk about this. Yes, you are a team and you want to work your finances together, but you have to have room in your budget for each of you, for your interests.
Yeah.
And, there's so many different ways you can divvy that up. But then getting back into financial infidelity, it is that gray line because are you, controlling them through the finances? And see, there's so many things that you can dig up and it's not really about the numbers. There's something else going on in the relationship.
Elle was actually a marriage counselor for many years.
Yeah, you can tell that.
Yeah, and she recognizes the reality of the situation that, and I find this with my wife most of the time, if she's upset about X, it's probably about Y. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we really need to get down to the nitty gritty. We need to understand what the real reason is, what the real cause is of the argument. But in order to do that, you have to spend quality time with one another. You have to have good conversations about money.
Yeah, you have to ask really, really good questions.
Yeah, you're never going to get a good answer without asking a good question. That's the source of every good answer. And a lot of the good discussions we've had come out of our dates, and we have money dates ourselves. We have regular dates at the same time. You have to date your spouse. And Elle shares with us here the concept of a money date.
For us, once a month seems to be the best fit, just schedule-wise. And we would start out with the wins. What's going well for us? It could be things going well at work, things going well, finances, family, just kind of on a positive note. And then we would review what's been going on, for the last month, what worked, what didn't. And then, we have to have the numbers. It is a money date. And, you said spreadsheet. We use Google Sheets shared. So before the money date, I'll just text. It's been updated in case you wanted to check it out. I've also used apps just because I'm usually reviewing them to kind of get a visual way of where everything's going. But then, that's it. It's down to about 5 minutes where we're actually looking at the numbers. It's just making sure the transfers work out. Again, the power of automating, it means we don't have to worry about every penny because every penny is already being moved. And then life happens. So what didn't work? If a kid gets sick, what happened there? What shifted? Make adjustments. And then for the next month, what's going on?
I love the way she organizes her money dates. Now, I violated some of her rules on the front end. I'm a big spreadsheeter.
You just jumped right into that
spreadsheet nerd, and it's funny. Some of those memories that you have, they're so vivid for you. One of those is my wife and I sitting in our apartment, and me saying, "Hey, we need to have a budget discussion," and before we got married, we went through my spreadsheet. I built a spreadsheet for her. I went through my budget, her budget, our budget. And, for us, that worked out pretty well. But that may not be your spouse. So I would exercise caution going straight to the spreadsheet. It can just start with a discussion. We like to conduct, our money visits quarterly. She does them monthly. I think no matter what you do, you need to make sure that you're continuing to have this discussion. And if you're uncomfortable having the discussion, maybe you need an impartial third party to be a moderator or just help explain things in a different way. And that's where a financial planner comes in. And Elle, in episode number 200 of the Retire with Purpose podcast here, she shares with us how a financial planner can help get both spouses actively involved and on the same page when it comes to your retirement plan.
Well, I think financial, planners and advisors can be so helpful because sometimes, and this has happened with us, where those initial conversations are a little confrontational, whether you intend to or not, and having that third party who's objective. But the first thing they need to do before you even buy in with like having the plan and the finances and you bring in the advisor, that spouse has to feel like the advisor is working for both of them. And if a spouse feels like that advisor isn't in their corner, they're going to be less likely to go in with the plan. They might drag their feet. I've seen people where their husband, their wife, I'll do it. But then they sabotage the budget. Or you have, financial infidelity, those secret purchases here and there. So initially have the conversation, just the two of you. And if needed, I would have the advisor meet with the reluctant spouse to kind of say, hey, listen, before we move in, separately, I know, your husband, your wife is really excited about this plan, but I want to advocate for you as well. This is a partnership. What are some things that you are feeling need to be on the table? What are some discussions we need to have?
Yeah, I would echo exactly what she said. Oftentimes when families come to see us, there may be one spouse that's kind of controlling the reins, and then they bring the other spouse in like secondarily, like after the fact, after the plan's already built. And I have been met with some resistance, like, well, you're just working for his best interest. And it's like, well, wait, I only know him. I don't know you. And now that's where so I like her idea about bringing the other spouse in on their own to get a real feeling of where they're at and having open, honest conversation.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept to say, well, why don't you go ahead and go meet with our advisor and I'll stay at home. I think it's an interesting concept. I don't see that actually working in practice. Usually,
and maybe it's a phone call too. It's like, hey, I just want to start to build a relationship with you because it is a partnership.
Well, you have to have a relationship with your advisor if you are the female, because you're the one that's most likely going to be managing the finances if you're not already at some point in the future. So you're going to need to get comfortable with the financial plan and mostly with that financial advisor, or you're going to be like the other 70% of women that are left with a financial advisor. They decide to leave. And the reality is that 85% of men die married. And that means that, 85% of women are going to be picking up the pieces, and they're going to be the ones that actually find out if that financial plan actually works. If you're ready to have that conversation with an advisor that'll work for both of you, give us a call right now, 866-482-9559. We can have that conversation over the phone, a virtual meeting, conference, or in person, 866-482-9559. Maybe it's about picking up a book and better understanding what all of your your options are. Maybe a book will help you get on the same page. And many individuals that we've worked with, the couples have each read Job Optional. And after reading the book, highlighting, writing down questions, using our workbook that comes along with it, they've already really dialed in and answered a lot of those important questions together so that we can have a really productive conversation. If you'd like to get a copy of my best-selling book, Job Optional, give me a call right now, 866-482-9559. We'll send it out to you at absolutely no cost, no obligation. This is going to be a tremendous tool as you enter the new year. 866-482-9559. Get your complimentary copy of my book, Job Optional. Next up, what is the difference between a pension and a 401k?
First-time callers are eligible to receive one in-stock book per request. Limit one book per week per household, up to 3 books per calendar year. See full terms at howardbailey.com/terms. You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Here is my good friend, Marshall Johnson, here with me.
Hey.
And well, we've got a pretty basic article we're going to share with you that came from our weekend reading, but it is a very, very, very important article at the same time. You might be wondering, what's the difference between a pension and a 401k? Maybe you think you have a pension, but you actually have a 401k, or vice versa.
Sure.
These are two very different things, and it's very important that you understand the difference between these two tools. We shared this with you in not only an article that went out as part of weekend reading, but also our podcast. You can get a link to this particular article at retirewithpurpose.com. This article titled Pension versus 401k, What's the Difference?
What's the difference? You know, I think it's a great topic, because I can't tell you how many times I'll sit down with a family and we start talking about their situation. They go, yeah, I got a 401k at work and it's with Fidelity, and then we'll go on and start talking about something else, and then I'll come back and say, well, do either one of you have a pension? And he'll say, yeah, I already told you, it's at Fidelity. It's like, well, pension is very different than a 401k or a 403b or a 401a.
This is an understandably confusing area of personal finance in retirement planning, because the government seems to want things to be confusing. Look at what the IRS did. Look at all the different plans that you have out there: 401ks, 403bs, 457s, 401as. And then you have your pension plans and all these pensions. You know, they work differently. Defined contribution, defined benefit. You know, this is a strange and unusual world for the average American. This is why, you know, we specialize in these things, because it takes expertise to really truly understand the difference in how all these different tools actually work. I'm a retirement income certified professional in addition to being a certified financial planner practitioner, because you need specialized training, you need specialized experience in retirement planning, specifically retirement income planning, to understand all the ins and outs and how to convert that 401k into a pension as you step into retirement. The main difference here is that a pension guarantees you a monthly income in retirement. A 401k, the retirement income from a 401k, that depends on your own contributions as well as your employer's contributions, annual performance, etc. There are a lot more variables in a 401k, and they really separate these two different worlds by defined benefit plans, defined contribution plans. Defined contribution plans are all those 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans. Those are your defined contribution plans. You are making contributions to those plans. The defined benefit plans, now those are pension plans. Those are guaranteed income. The employer makes all of those contributions, and that is a pension. So defined benefit, defined contribution, that's the real difference here.
Yeah, the defined benefit plans. And those are really, you know, things that are becoming vintage, if you will. You know, when our
kind of like the 4% withdrawal rule.
Yeah,
antiquish.
What'd you call it? The dark ages, maybe. So the point is that, you know, in the mid 70s, the government realized that companies were really going to struggle with these pension plans because people were living much, much longer than ever before. And so they needed to encourage people to save for their own retirement. Well, how can we do that? Well, let's set up some tax benefits. And that's the line item, 401k. That's the actual line item in the tax code. 403b, 401a. These are all line items in the tax code that was created through the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act that was passed in the late 70s and became popular in the 80s. These things came about, these contribution plans, Casey Weed, came about because the benefit plans were becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah. And the defined benefit plan, your pension, that simplified retirement. It made retirement so much easier because you knew that you had a guaranteed income at some point in the future. You got your statement once a year, or you got online and printed off the statement, did your pension projection. You knew, if I work here for a number of years, if I work here for 20 years, if I work here for 25 years, this is exactly what my guaranteed income is going to be in retirement. You didn't have to worry about investing those dollars. You didn't have to worry about picking the right funds. You didn't have to worry about the expenses in the funds,
or
the expenses in the plans.
Panicking when the market dipped. You didn't have to watch an account balance swing around.
Well, and taxes. You didn't have to worry about, well, do I contribute to the Roth or do I contribute to the traditional? There's so many more decisions that you have to make when it comes to your 401k. And I think the biggest thing, and Harvard Business Review did a study on this. They said the real retirement crisis is the shift we made from pension plans to 401k plans, defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans, because in prior generations that had pensions, they were always thinking of income. They were always thinking of retirement income. I am working so that someday I can get $4,000 a month in income. Yeah. And now you have a generation of retirees that has been working towards accumulating a certain amount of dollars and trying to get the biggest return every year. They say, I want to have $1 million someday when I retire. However, not actually turning around and equating that to an income. And so we're constantly thinking growth, return on my money, return on my money, return on my money. And Harvard said what that big shift is it's actually about return of your money. And you have to invest much differently in order to have a stable income, a pension-like income from that 401k in retirement than you did on your way to retirement. There's a huge difference between income and growth. Most financial advisors, especially those that have been in this industry a very long time, they've been focused on growth. It was all about getting growth. You sit down with them and what do they talk about? It's, hey, this is the return that we're going to get this year. It's all about return on that money, return on the money. And then, the next question might be, well, what's the yield? What's the dividend income? And the last question is, what's the safety that I'm getting? What's my downside protection? What certainty do I have? If you're working with a retirement income professional, like we have here at Howard Bailey, now the conversation becomes about income. It's return of your money, not return on your money. And that was one of the biggest things my grandparents taught me, is it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. It's not about the return on your money. It's about the return of your money. And then number two is, well, how safe is it? And then, the last thing that we're going to talk about is the return on, or the growth of those dollars. We have to shift our way of thinking as we step into retirement and put together a different strategy. If all you have been doing is focusing on growth and you're going, boy, how do I turn this into a pension? How do I turn this into a lifetime income like grandpa had? Give us a call right now and we will do a retirement income projection for you at no cost. 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We will walk you through all those different layers of your financial life and show you how to convert what you have today into an income you can't outlive.
Yeah, a lot of people in this article kind of goes through it and talks about, the pros and cons of each. But as you mentioned, for that generation that was raised to have a pension, they didn't have to worry about what was next for the stock market. They weren't worrying about, do I need to make an adjustment, or the market's down? Do I need to take some action? And so I think people retiring today, I often hear, just heard it the other day, a gentleman said, I wish I was like my dad. He had a pretty good pension. He worked for 40 years here, and it paid him, $3,000 a month on top of his Social Security. He had everything he needed. And I'm looking at this guy going, you've got all the money you need too, but you just don't feel as secure as dad did because you didn't have a guaranteed source. You're watching it swing in the markets 30% this year and up 10% the next year. He has to build a plan much like his dad did.
We have to turn it into a guaranteed income. We have to turn it into an income strategy. We have to turn it into a paycheck that comes into your mailbox every single month. We called this for a long time. We call this mailbox money, right? Where's that mailbox money? And that's what a retiree really wants. They want that mailbox money, just like my dad has. He said, you know what? I know I have X amount of dollars every single month coming in, and I can spend it all because next month I'm going to get another check. And then I can spend all of that. And then next month I'm going to get another check just like that. And that's the type of retirement income strategy that he wanted. He said, I don't want to worry about what's going on in the stock market. I don't want to have to worry about what's going on in Washington. I just want to know that I can spend what I want to spend every single month for the rest of my life. Now, this is not to say that pensioners don't have challenges as well. That pension decision when you step into retirement can be a fairly complex one at the same time. I have seen very simple options where, hey, you have a single option or a joint life option. I have seen more complex options where it's, well, you have single, you have joint and survivor that's 50%, joint survivor with 25%, or you can take a lump sum. You have 10-year period certain in life. You have, you might have a couple dozen different options, and you're trying to figure out, well, which one is the best one? And we had ended up with a bunch of different clients that all came from employers in the medical field from Warsaw, because they all had a very complicated pension decision. They had more than one pension for many of them, Biomet, Zimmer. And for one that came in to visit with us, they were referred to us by another client, and they had this pension decision, and we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We ran a real analysis to figure out which one was the best that they should keep. Can we beat the pension? We ended up keeping one of the pensions. We ended up rolling over the lump sum of the other pension. And they said, that, I'm going to tell all my friends, because everybody else I talked to said you need to take the lump sum on everything. Yeah. They didn't run the actual numbers to show me, which one is going to be the best option for me. You have to actually run those numbers. I've got another couple that I worked with that had worked for a defense contractor here in Fort Wayne. And their pension decision was very complex as well. We ended up going with the single life, even though they wanted income guaranteed for both their lifetimes. But what we did was we supplemented it with life insurance. And that means they're actually going to be able to always leave the value of their pension on their heirs, and their spouse is going to be taken care of at the same time. And it's going to be done more tax efficiently. It's going to be tax free when the one passes away and leaves that death benefit to the heirs or to the spouse for that matter. If these are the types of decisions that you're going through right now, how do you take your 401k, turn it into a pension? How do you take your 401k, get a guaranteed income you can't outlive? What about your pension? You have a lump sum pension option. You have a variety of different pension options, and you just want some assistance. You want a coach. You want someone to show you how to best run the numbers and integrate this with the rest of your financial life. That's why we're here. Give us a call right now at 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll walk you through all of your options and give you a report that shows you exactly which option is the best for you in your unique situation. That number is 866-482-9559. We'll be right back next week, right here, same time, same place on Retire with Purpose.
You've been listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Investment advisory services offered through Howard Bailey Securities, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Working with Howard Bailey Securities, LLC cannot guarantee investment success or that specific financial goals will be achieved. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc. owns the certification marked CFP and Certified Financial Planner in the U.S., which it awards to individuals who successfully complete CFP Board's initial and ongoing certification requirements. Howard Bailey Financial is a registered trademark of Howard Bailey Financial. All rights reserved. Information is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice. Howard Bailey Financial nor its advisors are qualified to give tax or legal advice. You are encouraged to consult with your tax or legal professional for guidance on your individual situation. This radio show is a paid placement.